This is your invitation, Saturday, August 27th. In the New York studio, I have a very special guest joining me, Rita Giganti, the daughter of the Genovese crime family mob boss, Vincent the Chin Giganti. We're going to talk about being born into a mafia family and growing up with gangster fathers. In person and live streaming, tickets are on sale at reformedgangsters.com. Come and join us. There's 3 times a year they make big arrests in New York, and I know because I was involved in a lot of them. The beginning of the NFL season, they always make a bookmaking arrest or a gambling arrest. The beginning, right before the Super Bowl, they always make a gambling arrest, a bookmaking arrest. And always around Christmas time, they make a raid, they make an arrest, a big mob arrest. Twice, both times I went to prison in the 90s, I got arrested in November.
Wow.
Right before Christmas for bookmaking and a number policy, and then the next time for bookmaking, always before Christmas, but it was always around during the NFL season and right before the Super Bowl. They do it all the time. I don't know why, but that's when they do it. I guess because everybody's active at that time, and there's a lot of money. I think it's because those times of the year, maybe there's a lot of money exchanging hands. People are betting. The NFL just started, so everybody's sending in money. And of course, the Super Bowl, everybody bet. People that don't gamble bet on the Super Bowl.
Right. They even said that there was a line in Sopranos where the guy that played Silvio, which was Stevie Van Zandt from the Bruce Springsteen E Street Band, he was getting arrested. I think they were at a funeral. Might have been when they killed Jackie Jr. and they done like a roundup. And as they're cuffing him up, that's what he says. He's like, every Super Bowl, y'all look to grab some popcorn headlines.
Yeah, that's what and that's the truth. That's where they get. Listen, a lot of stuff they got in the Sopranos, they got from the street. They must have good advisors. I mean, they must have good guys that were talking to them because, you know, they got a lot of stuff right about what goes on in the street.
Some of those cast members, man, I've talked with, and they've told me that they would get calls, like, and they got no idea how these guys got their numbers, but they would just be like, look, this would never happen. A mob guy would never do this, or a wise guy would never do this.
I always say it was all pretty real outside of him seeing a therapist.
Right.
That would have never happened. I mean, that's an impossibility. I mean, if it did happen to a guy at that level, they would have probably killed him.
Yeah.
So, you know.
For sure. Yeah, for him being that high, a boss. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but so bookmaking. My father told me a long time ago when I was a kid, when I was about 16 or 17, I made my first personal bet with a bookmaker. I had a friend, a very good friend of mine named Larry, and his father was a gambler, and his father bet with bookmakers, and he started putting in bets for me and his son and Larry. We used to watch the games by his house on Sunday, the football games, and we would bet, you know, $25 parlays. We were kids, you know, we were 16, 17. And my father found out. I don't know how he found out. I told him or somebody told him. But anyway, he found out. So we were sitting in my kitchen one day. So he tells me, this was in the 60s. He tells me, so you're betting with bookmakers, huh? I said, yeah, I'm betting, you know, $25 parlays on Sundays, the football games and all that with Larry. He goes, oh, yeah? He goes, well, let me tell you one thing. He goes, remember this. He said, I want to ask you a question. I said, yeah, what's the question? He says to me, who drives the Cadillacs and who drives the shit boxes? He told me, so I looked at him, I go, what do you mean? He goes, remember this, the bookmakers drive the Cadillacs and the gamblers drive the shit boxes. He told me, yeah, but you know, that still didn't deter me from keep betting, but but I did, I kept betting.
And I think, you know, that's something that's funny about this whole deal, this gambling thing. I think by and large, a lot of people know that, but it's just something about the, you know, you're laying that money down, the excitement of watching the game. And sometimes it's just almost a reason for you to watch a game that maybe you wouldn't have any interest in. Right. Like if there's a Monday night game with, you know, Pittsburgh and Cleveland, and you got no interest in either one of those teams, but you laid $100 down on Pittsburgh, you're going to watch it just to see what happens.
Yeah, it's the action. You know, people like action. You know, life could be boring. It gives you a little action. It gives you a little something. Even for me, like I know I don't bet like I used to, but like I'm a big baseball fan, so I could watch. I'm a big Yankee fan, So I could watch, I don't have to bet baseball to watch baseball. I love baseball. I watch the Yankees almost every night. I don't bet. But for me, like to watch a football game or a basketball game, like I'll make a little bet because I feel, it gives me a little action. It gives me a little more incentive to watch the game. And nowadays, with all these apps, like to make a bet when I was younger, like years ago, was a lot different than it is today. Today everything's on an app. You just go. I have one up now right now on my phone. I have an app. Like here, I have an app. This is a bookmaking app. So I just got to put in my code and boom, and I can bet whatever I want. But even on the other flip side, so I was a gambler and I also was a bookmaker. And the bookmakers, it's action too. You know what I mean? Like keeping track of the scores. You got to have you got to stay on top of things. You got to move money. You got to watch the lines. You got to make sure you don't get overloaded on one team. You got to know when to lay off, when not to lay. You got to know when to change the line. So it's not, you just don't book a bet. You know what I mean? There's more to it than just writing down a bet on a piece of paper or, the guy, whoever runs these websites, there's a lot of stuff that's involved in it.
Absolutely. I mean, today, in fact, my dad lays down some bets here and there. He sent me a text about 20 minutes ago, right before we got on air, and he said, "How did the Panthers go from -1 to +6.5?" And I said, "Well, none of the quarterbacks are playing." I said, "Baker Mayfield's not playing. Sam Darnold's not playing for whatever reason. They didn't give a reason. They just said they weren't going to play." And I was like, "So you got basically your third and fourth string quarterbacks are playing in what is now considered dress rehearsal for the preseason. Your second game is going to be where your starters play the longest." And
really, I never bet preseason. I would never tell anybody to bet preseason. It's hard enough. It's hard enough to win in the regular season.
Yeah.
Never mind preseason.
Like I always do. I would just go with whatever team has the best stacked quarterbacks.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're gonna do, I'm like you. I wouldn't advise doing it either. But if you want to do something small just to do it, I would say go with whatever team, because a lot of teams have notable quarterbacks. Pittsburgh's a good example. They've got 2 or 3 quarterbacks that started multiple games, and then they got good rookie and Pickett, I think's his name. I mean, they played fantastic the other week against Seattle.
But the world of bookmaking, it's such a different world today than when I grew. When I grew up into it, when I learned about bookmaking and sports betting, it was a whole different world. First of all, it was all illegal outside of Las Vegas. I remember in '77, I went to Vegas on my honeymoon in October of '77. Arnil Delacroce, rest his soul, and this other guy, Joe the Cat, he owned a travel agent. That was their wedding present. Part of their wedding present to me was my honeymoon in Vegas. They got me a suite at Caesar's Palace, and I took a junket years ago. You flew to Vegas for free. The casinos supplemented the airlines, and they used to call them junkets. And the whole plane flew there for free to go gamble. It was called a junket. And a lot of travel agents used to have junkets. So, it was different than it is today. So I flew to Vegas, and I remember they weren't in the casinos yet. The sports books, they weren't in the casinos yet. They were in the street, and it was in this little mall where matter of fact, they were building the MGM Grand at the time, and there was this mall, a shopping center, and I went in there, and there was a sports room in there, and I walked in, and it was like I was in heaven. It was like everything up on the walls, the horses, the sports, and I bet the Yankees were playing in the playoffs at the time against the Kansas City Royals, because it was in October of '77, right before the World Series. As a matter of fact, I went home for the World Series, and I was actually at Game 6 when Reggie Jackson hit the 3 home runs that year. I was at that game. But so I was in the sports room, and I bet the Yankees that night against Kansas City, and I won. But it was amazing. It was packed, and it was just a whole, because in New York it was illegal, and here it's out in the open, right in the mall. It was cool. And but it was back in New York. It was completely different. To take bets. It was a whole big procedure to open up a sports room.
Yeah, and a lot what people, the average bettor might know a little bit here and there, but some of the people that don't know, a lot of guys, they'll just make a bet with a guy, just say, "Hey, I want this team, I want that team." But when you're going with a sports book, every game has a line. So it might be 2 points, 3 points, 4 points, depending on, what it is. If it's decent teams, sometimes it'll be a point. Most of the time, if their teams are pretty similar, your home team is going to be favored by about a field goal, more or less. And that's kind of like what you said earlier to your point. You got to know when to change the line, because if you see where things start getting heavy on one side, then that line will start to move to get the action going the other way, because that's what bookmakers want. They want the same amount on each side. That way they collect the vig from the losers.
In the street, and in like a Vegas book, it's the same thing. At the end of the year, if a bookmaker winds up with all the vig, you got a great year.
Yeah.
But most of the time they wind up with the vig plus, because you got to understand, the public that gambles don't understand that. Well, not everybody understands. Everything is geared for the bookmaker to win.
Oh yeah.
Nothing is geared for the gamblers to win. Because if the gamblers won more than the bookmakers, there'd be no bookmakers. They'd be out of business. So everything is geared for the bookmaker to win. The people, like back in the day before it was legal, we paid people. We paid to get the lines. We had to pay for them. Guys in Vegas, they got money. They put the line out in Vegas, but for me to get it in New York, I had to pay $250 a week to get lines.
Wow.
I mean, you're talking about, you got to pay for, and you got to understand the line, the points or the money line or whatever line it is made for the bookmaker. It's not made for you and me to win. Them lines, them points on a basketball game or a football game or the money line on a baseball game, those guys are mathematical geniuses. If you ever notice, you watch a football game or a basketball game, sometimes there are 1 point or no points right on the money. And it's like amazing. So these guys are mathematical geniuses, and them lines are made for the bookmaker. And all these, and so everything is geared for the book, even like these exotic, even now, like my son, now they got this FanDuel, right?
Yeah.
This company's making millions. How are they making millions? This is how they're making millions. So you got a legitimate guy that never gambled in his life, right? He goes to work every day, puts his 8 hours in, he's a truck driver, a milkman, whatever the hell he is. Now he gets this thing, FanDuel. He sees it on TV. Oh, bet with FanDuel, win $1 million, this and that, blah, blah, blah. So now he downloads the app. Now every day the guy's betting $5 10-team parlays to win $700. He thinks, oh my God, for $5 I could win $700. And he's betting 10 teams. You get 1 million people a day doing that. That's 5 million a day. That's a sucker bet. But the guy that's doing it $5, he's going, oh my God, it's only $5, $5 to win all this money. And that's how and they're just grabbing money because everything's geared up for them to win.
Because even if somebody gets lucky and hits one or two of them, you still got plenty of the suckers that done it before to pay it off. I mean, I like doing those things too, but that's more or less like just fun, the average gambler. Like you said, the average guy that doesn't gamble, and it's that appeal of, oh, $5 and I can win $700-800. Oh yeah, that's me all day. But that $5 adds up every day, every day.
Everything's geared for the bookmaker, and exotic betting is great and it's fun, but you can't win.
Yeah.
And even when you do win, they have so much volume that it doesn't hurt them.
Yeah.
Instead, they have so much volume. And today with the electronics, like when I was doing it, we had to do everything manually. So we had to watch the bets. We had to move the money. We had to know when to edge off. We had to know when to move the line. Today, it's all done electronically. Today, the websites do it all. So now that even gives the gamblers less of a chance to win and more of a chance for the bookmakers to make the money, because the money's being moved, the lines are being moved, bets are being edged off, and they're taking it down. They're taking it down. I mean,
and a lot of the smaller bookmakers, at least where I'm at, it's not quite legal over here, so I'm definitely not going to name any names. Yeah. But they won't even take those high, like multiple team parlays. I think a lot of them will cap you at like 3, because a small bookmaker that's just doing it for fun, he can't take a hit like that. Like you said. But these big companies, even if somebody does hit them, they won 5 times that by all the other guys out here.
Right. I mean, in New York, back when in the day, there was really no small bookmakers. The small bookmakers got gobbled up by the mob guys. I mean, if you found a bookmaker that wasn't winning anybody, you step to them and, you make them a runner, like, in the street, then you have runners, with half sheets. I mean, there's so much involved, so you have people with half sheets. Everybody was making money with bookmaking, but exotic betting, it's hard enough to pick one winner. So now you get a teaser bet. Oh, I got 10 points to play with. Like here, like today, I just looked for the hell of it before we went on. I went on my app, my bookmaking app, just put it in, playing around. So tonight, Green Bay's -3.5 and New England's -6.5. So to make a $25 parlay with Green Bay -3.5 and New England -6.5, I could make a $25 parlay to win $65.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? But that's what they want me to bet. They want you to bet parlays. They want you to bet exotic betting. They want you to do all that because that's how they take it down. My advice when people ask me about advice of gambling, I say just pick your best bet of the day and make one bet, make your best bet of the day and roll with it, And I always favor home teams too.
Yeah. I remember there was one year I used to work at this big steel company, and we had times where we could sit around the table and talk. And I would tell this guy, I was like, this year, I said, I'm going to bet Alabama on Saturday. I don't care who they play. I don't care what the line is. I'm going to bet Alabama on Saturday, and I'm going to bet New England on Sunday. And that's all I'm going to bet all year. And I'm going to bet the same amount every time. I'm not going to up it. I'm not going to drop it. And I said, and I guarantee at the end of the year, I'll be up money. Now, I didn't stick to that as far as those being the only teams. You never can. Yeah. But at the end of the year, I counted up, and I did do it. But you would have been up, if a $100 better, I think at the end of the year would have been up like 20, it was like 2,100 or something like that. It was crazy. Yeah.
Well, that's all right. I love when people used to tell me they had systems. And that, I could. Like one guy, I mean, some of the systems that I know of that people gave me or people use, they didn't make money periodically with it, like football, NFL, home team underdogs. I know one guy that's all he bet. No matter who the underdog was, he bet home team underdogs. Sometimes they stood up and sometimes they didn't. Baseball, I had another guy baseball's very streaky. So we know that, teams go on winning streaks, hitters go on hitting streaks. It's very streaky. So another guy had he used to follow baseball. He only bet baseball, and he wouldn't bet a team unless they won 4 games in a row. Once they won, whatever team it was, no matter who it was, once they won 4 games in a row, he started betting them. And I still watch that. I still pay attention to that. And this year alone, some teams went on 10, 12, 15 game winning streaks. So some systems, if you pay attention, you can make a little money with them. But at the end of the day, the bookmaker is going to wind up with the money. No matter which way you twist and turn it, at the end of the day, the bookmakers wind up with the money. The casinos wind up with the money. It's all geared up for them.
And like last year, I was able to clear a little bit through the playoffs because I rode Cincinnati, hard all the way through. And your general public typically likes the favorites. They like who everybody thinks is going to win. And Cincinnati wasn't, I think they might have been picked to beat Oakland in their first wild card game. But after that, everybody picked them to lose to Kansas City. Everybody picked them to lose to whoever that was they played before then. Nobody was riding them. And I rode them all the way through. I rode them through the Super Bowl. They was getting 3.5. They only lost by 3.
I bet them in the Super Bowl too. Yeah.
So we won by half a point.
Yeah, I bet them in the Super Bowl. But I've been betting. I've been involved in sports since I'm a teenager. First I started out betting with a bookmaker when I was a kid, and my father gave me that speech about the Cadillacs and the ship boxes. And then when I got a little older, I had my first half sheet. I had a couple of kids in my neighborhood that wanted to bet, so I got a half sheet. Back then, so a half sheet is like I had customers, and I would call it into a book. It was my father's office, but I had a half sheet. So I would have 10 customers, and they would bet. And then if they won, I would go in the red for what they won. And then the next week, if they lost, I would come out of the red. And if they lost, I would get half of the money, 50-50 with the bookmaker. So, back then, a lot of people made money with sports betting. There was the runners made money. Then the bookmaker had to hire clerks. rent apartments. It was a whole big operation. It wasn't like today. You just like today, I just go on my phone and I just go on my phone and I type in my code. I put in my username and my password, and then I log in, and boom, and everything comes up. You know,
Yeah.
Back in my time, even up to the 90s, I mean, this all exploded like when I was in jail. But before I went to jail, you know, it was a whole big procedure to run a sports business, or, you know, be a bookmaker. It was a whole big procedure with apartments and phones and clerks, and you even had to get special paper. We had special paper, so when you write it down, it goes right to a duplicate. So you had 2 copies, and it was a job. It was a full-time job, actually. It was a full-time.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. I mean, especially back in the day, because I think sometimes we get accustomed to how easy things is now. Like somebody could send a mass text to 50 people, and everybody's got their lines for the day. But back in the day, you couldn't do that. You had to make phone calls, and then people, some guys that start calling real early in the morning, 10 o'clock, what's your line? And they'll follow it. They'll follow it right on up till game time.
And some guys will call 10 bookmakers at a time to see who has the best line, because don't forget, I might have a team at 6.5, and you might have a team at 6 because you got more action on that team than I got. So your line's going to be a half a point different, more or less, than my line. So guys, real gamblers are going to shop around. They're not going to bet with one bookmaker. They're not going to only have one number. They're going to bet. They're going to call up different bookmakers and shop around to get the best price they could get, to place their bet.
If they get lucky, you can middle it. So if somebody's got 6.5, somebody's got 7.5, you can bet both sides and try to middle the game and win both ways. Now, I don't advise people to try to do that. It's very hard to do. And you got to find numbers that are off.
The middle. But I'll tell you one thing about today. In this day and age, which is good for the gambler, is there's a lot of information.
Correct.
Way more than in my day. There's a lot of information, a lot of stuff, computerized picks. So you have a lot more information to pick. To if you pay attention and you're intelligent enough, and you look at all this stuff, you could make a really good decision on who to put your money on, because there is a lot of information out there. There's a lot of handicapping, a lot of computerized handicapping, which is some of it's really good. Some of them are sharp. Some, it all helps. I mean, I know bookmakers that are complaining about it. I read an article a while ago that bookmakers are complaining about it because there's too much information out there, too much computerized information.
There's some of them sites you can go to, like if you're just looking at a game, like the Green Bay game you mentioned, it'll tell you Green Bay's home record for the last 10 games or away record for the last 10 games, if they covered the spread, if they didn't cover the spread, if it went over the number, if it went under the number. I mean, and people follow and love those trends. They'll say, well, they've covered 9 out of 10 games. They're going to cover this one. People fall in love with those, man.
Even the weather. I mean, even the weather, like today you got a weather app. Like back in the day, so we wanted to find out the weather in some cities to figure out what the lines. We used to have to call up that city and ask for that day's weather. Like, is it raining there? Is it snowing in Pittsburgh? Is it raining? Is it snowing in Buffalo? Is it raining in Dallas? Because none of them stadiums had domes back then.
Yeah.
So we needed to know what the weather was. So we used to have to call them. Today, all you do is go on an app, a weather app. What's the weather in Arizona? What's the weather in St. Louis? And everything pops up. Back then, because the weather, everything plays a part in the outcome of a football game.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of people will go under in Chicago home games and New England home games when it goes later into the year because of the snow, and Green Bay is another one that's, weather plays a part. I mean, I've seen some shootouts and snows, but it's not typical. Typically, you're going to go under in cold weather games.
Yeah, and and today, I went to prison for bookmaking. I mean, it blows my mind. It's funny because today it's all legal, and everything it's legal today I went to jail for. The lottery, I went to jail for numbers. I had for policy. I went to jail in 91 for that. Then in 95, I got arrested in a big bookmaking thing with Brooklyn and Queens. They raided all our sports offices. They had our phones tapped. I took a plea. I got a 2 to 4. Then they used that same gambling indictment on a federal indictment to get me involved in a RICO. So bookmaking has caused me some pain in my life. Yeah.
And now it's, like you said, it's on every other channel commercial.
Yeah, I just paid mine today. I just lost. I was fooling around. I was bored, and the other night, and I bet a couple of baseball games. It cost me $130 fooling around. No, yeah. I should take my own. I should take my own advice. Right, I had to pay it today. I paid it today.
And the Yankees. My dad called me the other night. He said, "You watched that baseball game last night?" I said, "No, which one?" He said, "The Yankee game." I guess he had whoever they were playing.
Yeah.
I had them -1.5. He said they went into extra innings. They was up 3. I said, "I got it locked. There's no way." And then the guy hits a grand slam.
Donaldson hit a grand slam.
Yeah, he said the Yankees hit a grand slam.
Yeah, Donaldson. But I mean, people ask, not now because back then, people would ask me my advice, and I would tell, my advice to people that gamble is be careful for exotic betting. It's really not in your favor. Exotic betting. Don't chase. If you have a loser, don't go chasing, because once you start chasing, you're dead duck. Once you start chasing after, once you go into, put a cap on it, win or lose X amount of dollars, keep a cap on it. I'm going to bet I'm going to lose this much, or I'm going to win this much, then I'm going to shut it down for the week. Try to stay away from exotic betting, because it's hard enough to pick one winner, let alone 2 and 3, and just go with your best bet. And don't play favoritism. If you're a Yankee fan, don't bet the Yankees because you're a Yankee fan. If you're a Met fan, don't bet the Mets because you're a Met fan. Either stay away from, if you think, like I'll never bet against the Yankees. So, but I don't, and I very rarely do I bet the Yankees. But in reality, a lot of times I'll look and I'll go, wow, I like to bet. Like last night, I said, wow, I really, really would love to bet the Toronto Blue Jays tonight, against the Yankees, and I didn't, and the Toronto Blue Jays won. So, don't play favorites, because it could cost you money, because like it cost me money last night. Like I said, I should take my own advice. But and just be careful. Don't go overboard. Don't bet more than you can handle. A lot of times we would put caps on, and that's another thing. We used to track the gamblers too, because if you're calling it to me and you're betting $100 on a game, and then a couple of days later you call me up and you want to bet $500-600 on a game, I got to ask you, like, what do you do for a living?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, if you lose, how are you going to pay me?
Mm-hmm.
But with the apps, they can't get beat, the apps, because they got your banking information.
Yeah, they get the money up front. Back in those days,
they're locked into you. Like down here, the Seminoles have the app, the gambling app. It's locked into your checking account.
Mm-hmm.
So they either deposit it or they take it right out. They're locked into your bank account, so they can't lose money.
And a lot of guys too, back in the day, they would bookie surf. If they got down into one, they would hop into somebody else. I might want to make a bet with you this week, because they were already down to Joe across the street for a $500. So they're going to go to Jack up the street and bet another $500 to pay the other guy. Now you lost that one, and you're down 1,000 to 2 different bookmakers.
And be careful of enticements and hands. Like all the advertisement. Bet this and you get that. It's all just to entice you to come in and bet your money. And just be careful. All that glitters isn't gold. I tell people, just because they're offering you something, there's nothing for free, they're offering you something for a reason.
Yeah.
They're offering you something for a reason.
Money lines is another one where I've seen people get in trouble, because, if you have a bet like what you said, Green Bay -3. So your typical bet, if of $100 better, you're going to bet if you lose, you're going to owe 110. That $10 is a vig. Right. Well, if you bet the money line, I don't know what it is. I'm just making up a number, but I would imagine it's probably somewhere around like 180 or 200. So you're betting almost double the amount, but you're erasing the point spread. Right. And I've seen some guys get murdered on that. Guys, money lines be like $500-600, but they're like, oh, it's a guaranteed win. They're home. They haven't lost at home in forever. The team they're playing is horrible. And then there's the biggest upset of, whatever you want to look. Like last year, the Jacksonville Jaguars, when they beat the Buffalo Bills, I think it was. It was a crazy upset. Yeah.
And that's my point, where the lines are made for the bookmaker. That's a perfect example of what I told you earlier. That's the reason why the lines are the lines, because that's what they want people to do. Not that they know the outcome of the game, but they have an edge. They understand what's going on. These people are intelligent people. This is what they do for a living. That's what they want. They want the guy to see that and go, wow, New England, I got to lay 10 points when I could just lay 250 to win 100. You know what I mean? And they're not going to lose this game. They're going to definitely win. They might not cover, but they're going to win the game. And then, and then what happens? At the end of the day, they don't win the game. Mm-hmm. So you got to always remember, everything is geared for the bookmaker to win. Even with horse racing, years ago, gambling is gambling. I love the racetrack. That's one of my favorite. I love the racetrack. I just grew up around Aqueduct Racetrack in Ozone Park. I was always at the racetrack. My friends worked in the racetrack. I love betting horse. I love the racetrack. Not that I'm a degenerate horse player. I'm not, but I just like the atmosphere. I like to bet horses. And years ago, I was at Aqueduct, and I used to go early in the morning. My cousin was a jockey, and I would go early in the morning and watch the horses work out. Not that I was a sharpie. I just used to go there, and I was there next to. So there's the Morning Telegraph. That's the racing form. And I was there with a clocker. I was standing there with a clocker, guy that was clocking the horses for the morning for the program. And he's standing next to him, we're talking, and he's clocking the horses, and he looks at me and he says to me, "You like to bet horses?" I said, "Yeah, I like to bet horses." And he says, "Well, let me tell you something." He said, "I have a little bit of a shot to win because I'm here every day working." He goes, "You have no shot." Yeah, that's his exact words when he told me. He goes, "I have a little bit of shot to win." He goes, "You have no shot." Yeah, I said, "Thanks." I told him. Yeah, but
yeah, I've never bet horses. That's one thing that I've never bet on, largely because I've never even been to a horse track before. They don't really have them down here where I'm at.
It's just listen, gambling is like anything else. It's like drugs. It's like alcohol. It's all about instant gratification. We're human beings. Human beings like instant gratification. Some take it to extremes. Like I know guys that gambled like heroin addicts shoot heroin. They lost their homes, their kids' tuition money. It's a disease. I mean, I know degenerate, sick gamblers that would bet on anything.
They said Gotti was a heavy gambler.
He was a very, very heavy gambler, a big time gambler, and he lost. He was his brother Genie used to tease him and say to him, "Your bookmaker should follow you around with a pillow. So if you fall, he could put it under your ass. So nothing happens to you." But even when he was the boss, he gambled. And I used to tell him all the time, "Who the hell takes your bets?" I mean, I would never take your bet. I just tell him, "You can never bet with me." It's funny because I got arrested for gambling in the 90s, in 89. And and he had nothing to do with it. It was my father's business. And it was on the front page of the Daily News. John Gotti crew, rate $14 million a year gambling ring busted, And when I got out on bail, I went to see him at the Bergen Hut Fish Club. And I walked in, he goes, "Hey, where's my money?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "We made $14 million last year. You didn't get, where's my end?" I said, "Oh, please, I'm going to go to jail again for this, right?" He goes, "Yeah, I know." He goes, "If you didn't have bad luck, you'd have no luck at all." He told me. He was teasing me. He wanted it. Where's my end? He told me. I said, "Your end?" He goes, "Yeah, we made $14 million last year. I didn't get 10 cents from you." I said, "Yeah, to 14 million. Yeah, imagine that." Because they always blow the figure.
Oh, yeah.
They always make it
blow it up an extra 5 million or whatever to make it seem like it's
people are always going to gamble. There's always going to be bookmakers. Nowadays it's different than my day. Like I said, everything's done computerized on apps. I don't even know how to be a bookmaker today. You just got to get a website. But
yeah, that's what you can do. And when I was coming up, there was guys that my father would play with, and he turned me on to this guy who was a real old timer, old school guy. His name was Louie, and I called him Broadway Louie. Yeah. And he ran this. It was at one time it was a car wash, but the car wash part of it had fell in, and he just operated out of the office. And so I would go see him on Fridays, and he had parlay cards, and then he would have a sheet laid out for the lines for the week. He wasn't too much on changing lines. He would make them on Fridays, and then he would ride that through the weekend. But again, that's before you had all this information of, weather and, where somebody's at every single field. And before, you can watch NFL Network now, 30 minutes before kickoff, and you got the inside info on who's playing and who's not on every game going.
They put all that stuff in the computer now, the weather, it's all analytics. I mean, it's crazy, the information you got out there. But, if someone would ask me my opinions, like I said earlier, it's a lot of fun. Just be careful. Don't go overboard, keep it fun and bet within your means. Just don't go crazy. And know at the end of the day, you're probably not going to win. At the end of the day, at the end of the year, most likely you're going to be in the red.
Yeah, but it's giving you something.
Have a little fun along the way.
Yeah. I'll tell you, and I'll close out with this. It was really cool how this happened. So when the playoffs started last year, I made $200 bets. One was for the Bengals and the Bucks, and the other one was for the Bengals and the Rams. They just had to make it there, them two. So when it got to, the weekend of who's going to make it there, the Bengals were the first game. Right. So they won. So I'm already halfway there. So now you got the Rams and the 49ers, and the line was 3.5. So I said, well, I'm going to take the 49ers. I think I was going to win like $3,200. So I said, well, I'm going to take the 49ers for $1,500. That way I'm guaranteeing myself $1,500, because if the Niners win the game, I'm going to lose that bet where I'd have won the $3,000 or $3,200, but I'm going to have the $1,500. If it works the other way, I'm still going to hit it. Luckily, the Rams won the game, but they only won it by 3. So I still covered with the 49ers. So I won the $3,200 for picking it right, plus the $1,500 for going over there. So you get lucky like that. But
you're supposed to get lucky, but more, definitely you get lucky. Listen, people have to have, some people hit the jackpot on a slot. It's like a slot machine. Yeah. Slot machines are geared to take in certain amount. They have brain. A slot machine has a brain.
Right.
I know, because I own slot machines. I had a vending company. A slot machine has a brain, and it knows that I'm going to take in 75% of whatever these people put into this machine. I'm keeping 75%, and I'm going to pay out 25%. And that machine knows if it pays out 10,000, it knows it has to bring back in 10,000.
Yeah.
So you're going to win those kind of bets this way, and that's what it's just like a slot machine. The bookmakers are going to have winners, because the winners are going to bring in more people, and the volume's going to get bigger, and they're going to overcome them wins. And that's the name of the game for a bookmaker, is volume. Yeah. You have to have volume, because you have to overcome the beatdowns. And that's why little bookmakers get jammed up. They don't have the volume. But today, with these apps, MGM, Caesars, all these apps, their volume is, they'll never lose.
Yeah.
They'll never lose.
And
they might lose it because they might have a guy like Merriweather come in and bet $5 million on a game. So maybe they'll lose for a night, but at the end of the week, they're going to make that up.
Yeah. Here in the South, they had a lot of poker machines. It was probably about 15, 20 years ago. They outlawed them and took them all away. And I had this friend, he owned a pizza parlor, and they had a blackjack machine where 4 or 5 people could sit at it, and the dealer was all automated. He said, we made so much money off that blackjack machine. He said that paid our rent. He said, so everything we made off the pizza was profit.
I was in the vending, I had a vending company. I was making $15,000 a week in the 90s. I was making crazy money with it. I had a vending company. As a matter of fact, I got indicted. It was part of my indictment. They said I extorted it.
Yeah.
I extorted the vending company, but I had to plead guilty to extortion because they said I extorted the owner of the vending company. But that's another story for another podcast. But yes, well, that's about it. So everybody, if whoever's gambling, be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, got to watch out, man. It can get out of hand, like you said. Matter of fact, we touched on The Sopranos earlier. There was a couple of episodes in there where the guy got in deep and he wound up losing. He had a store, lost his store and everything.
That's real life. I saw that happen many times. All right. Well, are you coming to New York next week?
I am. I'm coming down next week. Coming on Friday.
Next week.
All right, my friend. We'll see you next week.
See you next week. Be good. Stay safe.
All right.
All right, Pasquale, I'll see you.
Good night, guys. Take care.